Let's get spooky. This is our Station Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen. Welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted hosts, we have Lisa.
Hello, ghouls and boils.
We have Karen.
What up, my horrorholics?
I am Shannon. In this episode, we are with a lovely friend of ours from DragonCon, Sarah Rose. Yay! Hi. But this episode, we're going to explore in London through the eyes of the demon barber himself, Mr. Sweeney Todd. So, do you think we will stay safe from his deadly blade? Hey, horrorholics, it's time for the Ghastly Report. Stay tuned for all the fun, spine-tingling news happening in horror today, from new releases to spooky events and so much more. Alrighty, and this Ghastly Report is going to be kind of a fun one. I'm actually just going to be telling you about all the really cool theater panels that are horror-esque related that you'll be able to see at DragonCon that Miss Sarah Rose has cultivated and teamed up with these other tracks in order to create some really fun theater content for those who go to DragonCon. First on the docket is going to be the Theater Lovers Meetup. That is going to be on Thursday, August 29th at 5:30 p.m. It's going to be in the Classics Track Room in the Marriott, M103/M105. Then we have a bunch of other fun things. There's a photo shoot on Sunday at 2:30 at the Hilton Steps. You have Harmonizing Horror, welcome to the Has-Been Hotel on Sunday, September 1st at 7 p.m. in the Animation Track Room in the Hilton. You also have The Change is for Good, a Wicked sing-along on Sunday, September 1st at 5:30 in the Hilton Grand East. We have Tales from Theater, Ghosts Behind the Curtain in the Urban Fantasy Track Room in the Westin on August 31st, which is a Saturday at 1 p.m. We have the Zombies and Show Tunes, which will be Friday, August 31st in the Apocalypse Rising Track Room. And then last but not least, in the one panel that I actually will be a panelist on is about keeping horror theater alive, specifically, like I said, horror. And that's going to be Friday, August 30th at 1 p.m. in the Horror Track Room that is also in the Westin. So we're really happy and excited for all that. We hope you all can join us. It's going to be a great time. If you want more information, please go to the DragonCon Theater Lovers Facebook group to get all that information. All right, let's get into this episode. First, we have Sarah. Sarah, would you like to give us like a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I'm Sarah Rose. I am what I call a nerd of all trades. I have been doing most recently DragonCon Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial, which is a fan community based around the hopes of inspiring DragonCon to add more theater content, whether that be just encouraging tracks to add it, or maybe even one day getting our own track. That's most recently what I've been doing. But I am also just kind of a big geek, a big nerd, where I love all things, whether that be horror, whether that be science fiction. I love like British period pieces. I do all sorts of things. So yeah, I basically have my hands in too many buckets, basically.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
I'm neurodivergent, so
Definitely. It's my the wonders of ADHD. I have too many shinies.
yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We actually really appreciate you joining us for this episode because this is really fun, and this is our very first theater focused episode, which I'm really excited. Let us know what you guys think because we are kind of excited about this. But let's kind of talk about the history of the musical itself. I know a lot of people who, if they're not in theater, only know the Johnny Depp movie that came out. What was that? 2007?
I was in college, so that sounds right. I'm going to be honest, I don't know the exact date.
That's all right. But it all started from Penny Dreadfuls, which for our listeners, we'll be touching them on our history of literature episode that we have coming up. We will also next year in 2025 do a whole episode on the Penny Dreadfuls because they were fantastic and are a great source of horror literature in the early days. It all started kind of from there, his story, from 3 different little sub-stories that got all blended into one. And who was that combined into? Was it Christopher Bond?
Christopher Bond. Yeah, he did a play in 1970 called Sweeney Todd. So, yeah, but basically, Sweeney Todd, as you said, it started as a penny dreadful, was then turned into a play in 1970. The play, it was never like a huge hit when it came to things. So what basically happened is Stephen Sondheim first he saw it and he conceived that this would make a really good musical. He first brought it to Broadway, which is a little bit opposite of what we see most shows now. He brought it to Broadway in 1979. Then it went to the West End, blew up. It won the Tony Award for Best Musical, then the Oliver Award, which is the West End's Tonys, for Best Musical. Basically, it's one of the first musicals that got a pro shot. It originally started as, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Len Cario. I am terrible with names. I apologize. And Angela Lansbury as Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett. Then in the West End, they did not continue their parts, but Angela Lansbury went on tour with it with George Hearn. And I believe that is when we got the pro shot, was with the first national tour. I could be wrong. Obviously, many people have done it. It's had several revivals, both on the West End and Kennedy Center. Patti LuPone played Mrs. Lovett, and Imelda Staunton played Mrs. Lovett. Most recently, Josh Groban and Annalee Ashford opened it on Broadway, which was then inherited by Aaron Trevette, and her name just went whoop, right out of my head.
Annalee Ashford?
Annalee Ashford is the one who originally did it.
Yeah, she got replaced. She stepped away this year, beginning of this year.
Yes, this last year. Sutton Foster. Yep, that's it.
There you go.
But yes, most recently it was taken on by Aaron Trevette and Sutton Foster before it closed again on Broadway. I don't know if it's currently touring, but I do believe that they are planning on doing another national tour. To be honest, Josh Groban is most well known to be an opera singer. He doesn't really have a whole lot of Broadway roots. I'm not even sure if he had been on Broadway before, but it was a very interesting choice, and I thought it worked really well. But anyway, I'm sure we'll get back into that.
Oh yeah.
But that's basically the rundown of Sweeney Todd on stage. Sondheim just basically, he felt like the story of Sweeney Todd would be added that much more with music. It would increase its dramatization and its impact, and obviously did, because it is one of his most well-known, one of Broadway's most well-known shows, let alone in the horror community. There really hasn't been another horror show that has met this kind of accolade as Sweeney Todd did. Fun fact about Sweeney Todd, this was never officially confirmed by Sondheim himself, but the rumor is that he wrote The Worst Pies in London to kind of make fun of Annie and Tomorrow, which if you look at the intervals, like they are really, really the same, very similar. And you can definitely, like, you did a mashup. I think if you played the two songs over each other, you could definitely see that. But I think that that's funny that he supposedly, through the grapevine, we've heard, like, he wanted to, like, poke fun of so much on of this hopeful song that is Tomorrow, and make basically like the antithesis of in The Worst Pies of London, which I think it's kind of funny.
So let's go ahead and dive into all of our initial thoughts, because we're starting to get there. We're starting to get there, and I know our group, and we're like chomping at the bit to really get into this, unlike what we would be for Mrs. Lovett's Pies. So, Lisa, why don't you go ahead and start with our initial thoughts?
Okay. I had heard about Sweeney Todd like throughout the years, and I admit I didn't really pay attention to the theater. Life happens. I love theater, though. Don't get me wrong. I love theater. I watched a little bit of it this week. I thought it was great, the 1979 one, except I cannot handle Angela Lansbury as Mrs. Lovett. Love her to death as an actress, but her voice just,
I don't know how I feel about this Murder, She Wrote slander.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
But you know what? Everybody has their own taste.
It's valid. Yeah. It's valid.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't agree with it, but
yeah. I was trying to find the other ones, but I couldn't. I just listened to the soundtracks at work, and they were pretty good. It was nice. So, I mean, I've always known about the Sweeney Todd stories, but I never really delved into it until about like maybe 3 years ago. Okay. And then I really got into it when the movie came out. But it was one of those this is kind of interesting. And so I'm hoping to, like, maybe if it does go back on tour and comes here to Colorado, I'm actually going to go see it.
There you go. Karen, what about you? What are your initial thoughts?
I remember Sweeney Todd, watching it with my mom. It came on TV. I remember Angela Lansbury singing as Mrs. Lovett, and I enjoyed the story. And then in 97, 98, I remember again watching it with my mom. Surprisingly, it was just the movie. It was Ben Kingsley, and I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. My mom enjoyed it too, surprisingly. And I knew about the Sweeney Todd story. I've heard of it throughout the years. And then when Tim Burton came out with it, Johnny Depp and Helen Bonham Carter, I was stoked to see it. It was like 2007.
2007.
Right after I graduated college, my brother took me to see it because he was like, "Oh, it's a horror movie, yeah." And then, like, after the second song, he turns to me and said, "Why didn't you tell me this is a musical?" And I was like, "Did you not pay attention to the trailer?"
Tell me you didn't watch the trailer without telling me you didn't watch the trailer.
So, like, every time the song would come on, he'd be like, and then when I start talking, he'd start paying attention. I was like, okay.
Which is like 80% of the movie.
He would zone out. I was like, really? It's okay. So I've been, interested on and off. It's on my music list to listen to when I'm driving, because it's either Sweeney Todd, Repo, or Hamilton. Sometimes Cats, but Cats tend to get a little bit long-winded.
Yeah. All right, Sarah, how about you?
So I've always been a big Angela Lansbury fan. So for me, that is initially what drew me to this musical, was Angela Lansbury. When I found out that she originated the role of Mrs. Lovett, I was like, okay, I've got to see it. I've got to find out, because a bit of hot goss. I am not actually a big Sondheim person in general. He's not, I don't hate his stuff by any means, but he's not the first composer that I'm drawn to. And so if I didn't find out about Angela Lansbury, being in it, I probably wouldn't have never seen the musical, let alone listened to it. I do have to say that like my original thought was like, it's a musical that doesn't necessarily always know where it wants to land. Does it want to be an opera, or does it want to be a comedy, or does it want to be a horror piece? And somehow they made it all work, in my opinion. They made the comedy and everything like that work. Now, as far as the movie goes, as I said earlier, I was in college when the movie came out, and I was definitely kind of like in my Wicked phase, my like big new, and which is funny because Wicked is not considered new anymore, but like new musical phase. Like I had just like gone to the Beauty and the Beast musical version that had played, and so I was really not in the headspace when Sweeney Todd came out to see it. I didn't see it for several years later. I remember it came out, I rented the DVD because that was still a time when we could rent DVDs. I put it in, and I remember I didn't get through it. And I'm not sure what it was, whether or not it was the fact that my big draw for it initially was Angela Lansbury and she wasn't in it, or that it was so different from the musical that I knew, because I do feel like it's similar, but it is different, and that is a thing to bring up, I guess, later. But yeah, I just, it wasn't something that drew me in right away. It was right after it came out, like on the heels of the Phantom of the Opera movie coming out and being super successful, even though it wasn't super beloved by theater lovers. And I think that was part of why they felt confident making the decisions they did, because it worked out so well with Phantom.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, my initial introduction to it was the movie, but I had a couple of friends who they absolutely loved the musical. Like they were obsessed with the musical. So like when the movie came out, they're like, "Oh, we got to go see it." So we went and we saw it in the theaters. I fell in love with it. They lent me their albums and their CDs of the theater productions for me to listen to. And I fell in love with it. And as a horror lover, I loved that it was spooky, and I loved that the person who actually was the villain in the story wasn't Sweeney.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked a lot of the weird aspects to it and the fun little things that were happening with it. But once you kind of like get sucked in, with Sweeney Todd, I feel like everybody falls in love with even like the theater productions as well as the movie, because it's such a good story. I don't know, it's something that I just truly enjoy. And I thought it was kind of interesting how the story unfolds. Speaking of how the story unfolds, how do we like the story and the plot and the impact it has on storytelling, not just in the movie, but in theater? Sarah, do you want to start?
Okay, so the story, I'm going to be honest, the story is definitely not one that I would immediately gravitate towards, because I have immediate ick of anything to do with cannibalism. It's one of those things. But the story in and of itself, I like that well, obviously that plays a part in it. It's really not like a super important part of it. It's just kind of like another thing to add, I guess, the grotesque to it, like the shock of that grotesque idea, especially during the play itself. We don't see like people getting ground up and stuff like that quite as much. Yes, they're a little priest. They do talk about, do you want a little priest, or do you want a little poet, or that kind of play on it, but they make you laugh about it. And that's the kind of thing. But as far as its impact on horror and the horror theater, I really can't say enough about how important it is that it became as well loved and as influential as it did. I mean, yeah, you do have, I mean, horror and theater has always gone hand in hand, but it wasn't really until Sweeney Todd that I can think of something becoming so mainstream, like in the horror sect of theater. We have things even today that are there and they're important, but they're more geeky than anything. I'm thinking of like the Evil Dead musical and stuff like that. Those are all things that, like, yes, they're horror and yes, they're important, but they're not mainstream. And so Sweeney Todd brought, number one, horror into the limelight of like the more like guitar people. But it also brought horror people into the realm of the theater and into the realm of the musical, whereas maybe they didn't do that as much as previously, as much as they did before it came out.
Karen, what are your thoughts?
I really love the plot because it reminds me of Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, where, people, if you're poor, eat the poor. He was talking about eating babies and children to, like, alleviate, the economy and stuff like that. So I didn't really much mind the cannibalism of the story. I found it a little bit, interesting because it's so taboo, so grotesque, but it happens in real life. Yeah, how the story unfolds and you realize who the true monsters are and who is the sympathetic hero. As for the impact of it being a theater, the production, it added more to the theater because there wasn't that many at the time. I believe that much horror musicals. I believe before that, if I remember correctly, like Little Shop of Horror came out either before or around the same time. And then there seemed to be a surgence of a lot of musicals, horror musicals after that. Because you had, not Little Shop of Horror, Little Shop of Horror was in 1980s. The Rocky Horror was in the 70s.
1986 was the movie, I know.
I wasn't really interested in musicals, as a kid growing up until I heard a lot of horror musicals. And when I started hearing horror musicals, that's when I started getting into it. I mean, my favorite horror musical right now is Repo Man and Sweeney Todd, Johnny Depp version. So it helped grow my opinion, helped grow the musical horror theater production genre.
Yeah, I definitely think it influenced a little bit more horror in theater. We now have like Dracula and the Evil Dead musical and stuff.
And don't forget Beetlejuice, guys.
Oh, I know
Beetlejuice. There is Carrie.
There's a couple other ones that I can't remember, but I've seen them pop up here and there. As far as it being, musical in movies like horror, it was definitely good, and it brought the gothic back a little bit. I think it brought the gothicness. That's not a word.
It could be.
It's a new word now.
Hey, gothicness gets the point across. So
we're not playing Scrabble here. We're not gonna dictionary check you.
Good, because I'm dyslexic. Anyway, I do like how it had the Hammer feel to it with the blood, and you felt the era, like some horror. But it also inspired, Repo the Genetic Opera. But we also can't forget Phantom of Paradise. That was also a musical horror movie way back in the 70s. So it's in there all together. So I would like to see some more like that. And I'm a fan of opera. So I kind of like the opera-esque point, singing in it. That's why I guess when I was watching the theater, and no offense to you, I couldn't hear Angela Lansbury because I'm kind of a opera snob. She's a great actress, don't get me wrong, but no. So I definitely think it's helped progress some horror in the theater, as well as in a musical horror in the film industry. And I'm hoping we're going to get more stuff like Repo the Genetic Opera and stuff like that. That was a great movie.
Repo was awesome. One that me and my friend Greg were actually just talking about it last night was Lizzie Borden. They did Lizzie the musical, and that's another one. And it's not like super well known, but it's like enough that like I think it could make a fun, like almost like Heathers-esque musical. Like if they wanted to make it, like do a pro shot of it, I think that'd be really cool.
I like that they're doing more and more pro shots of it, of the musicals, because I think it's getting people who wouldn't necessarily be in theater into theater because it's a little more accessible for them. But when it comes to the storytelling, I think Sweeney Todd is like a magnificent storytelling. You get this guy who hops on a boat back home. And there's a part of him that's hoping that he can find his wife and like his daughter and his family that he got separated from. He's got this young guy next to him who's just like all like super excited about it. And he's like, yo, pump the brakes, kid, because it ain't all that great. And then he gets there and he does see that it's not that great. And he's reminded of how horrible it is. And then he meets essentially a stalker, a crazy stalker woman who, you know, is like, oh yeah, no, they're gone. They're no more. Like, don't even worry about it. Stick with me. I got you. And just completely helps him unravel to what we have as now Sweeney Todd, no longer Benjamin Barker, but actually Sweeney Todd at this point.
Right.
I think it's interesting to see because there is almost a reality aspect to it where how many of us would have done almost the same thing or similar things had we been wrongfully imprisoned, sent away from our family for at least 15 years or more, to only come back to find out they're gone. And then at the end of it all, find out that they weren't gone. They just, one was insane and one was imprisoned.
Yeah.
Like, how many of us would be ready to just go on a mass killing spree because our world completely crumbled? It hits a little close to home, especially if you don't have any psychiatric help.
No, exactly. No, and that's the thing about the story that is Sweeney Todd, because yes, it's a horror show, but it also is a human show. And I'm sorry, I don't remember which one of you talked about it a little bit before the show, but it is horror, and the villain ends up being the time. They live in the poor and the poverty and the loneliness. You know, you can even like, yeah, you have Mrs. Lovett, and she's essentially like a stalker woman, as you said.
She is a stalker.
Also, you can kind of sympathize with her because she is so lonely, and you know, she has this person that she was in love with before, and he falls in love with Lucy, who is this beautiful person, you know, and obviously never gave a second thought to Mrs. Lovett. And you know, you can feel for her. It's a story that makes you care about the characters in it,
especially for the time that this was supposedly taking place in, which was in the late 1700s.
Exactly.
Women did not have rights. So the fact that she even had a shop that didn't have a man running it was the whole thing.
Well, but the thing is, she talks about another person having a shop, Mrs. Mooney, and her pie shop.
Yeah, across the street.
Yeah.
Historically, though, during that time frame, it was probably Mrs. Mooney's pie shop, but it was her husband who was in charge of it, who actually owned it. He basically named it after his wife, and his wife basically worked there. That's what it would have been like. So the fact that like in this story, Mrs. Lovett doesn't have a man attached to her shop is part of the reasons why it's a failure, because nobody's going to go to that because she's the one who's running it, not a man running it. The misogyny was heavy during that time frame.
And you know, you got to think, did Mrs. Lovett, maybe that's the reason that she wanted Sweeney Todd when he came back, was because he would provide that sense of security, maybe not necessarily to the public, but to herself.
Yeah.
It's a sense of security that she didn't have because she didn't have a husband. She didn't have a son or any kid.
But didn't her husband die, though?
In the movie, he did. I don't think they touched on it in the show. Whether or not in the movie, she said that he like had gout.
I mean, she's always been Mrs. Lovett, so I am assuming that she is a widow. Even with that being the case, she was a widow. Therefore, she didn't have a man taking care of her.
I mean, and most of the women during that time, if you were a person making your own money, there was a very different avenue.
And that is the movie From Hell.
Exactly. a totally different way of making money.
Different
For most
movie.
women.
But you also have to think about it. I mean, Mrs. Lovett instantly started a romantic relationship with him. She instantly made it where it was obviously they were connected. And it seems as soon as she did that, there was the increase in her business. Yes, humans were part of that process, but
Hey man, the rich feeding the poor, so
Eat the rich.
Don't just steal from them, eat them.
Yeah. Take some notes from the orcas.
Think of it as thrift.
Alrighty. Why don't we go ahead and start getting into a bit of the cast? Because there was quite a few different casts that were set up. We've already talked a little bit about them. Let's go ahead and start with the original cast with Angela Lansbury, Mrs. Murder, She Wrote herself, J.B. Fletcher as Mrs. Lovett. And then let's see here. We had Len Caro as Sweeney Todd. We had Victor Garber as Anthony Hope, which was the young, bright, happy, hopeful child who fell in love with Sweeney's daughter, Joanna.
I see you, Joanna.
It was played by the lovely Sarah Rice.
Of course, we had to get some singing in.
Of course. But we've got a pretty cool cast. But who was everybody's favorite? So for Sweeney Todd, and we'll include the movies.
Okay.
Or the movie, or the Tim Burton movie. We'll include that one. For Sweeney Todd, who was everybody's favorite?
Josh Groban, from everything I've seen, he did amazing as Sweeney. When they first cast him, I was, as I said, I was just kind of like, really? The opera guy who sang with Celine Dion? But really, he did an amazing job, just embodying everything. If you see him during his Tony performance in the Ballad of Sweeney Todd, when they did that on the Tonys, he did so great, in my opinion, of just he had the hauntedness that is Sweeney, that I think Johnny really did a great job of presenting, while also just kind of making the character his own. So I would definitely say Josh for me.
I would have that, but for me personally, it's Johnny Depp. I like his singing voice. I've heard of Josh Groban. I never heard him sing really until I heard Sweeney Todd, and it's that deep voice that I'm like, I don't know, I just didn't like that deep voice before Sweeney because it made him sound like a grandpa, in my opinion. It made him sound sort of kind of like a grandpa for me because it's so deep. I'm thinking of something different, but when you look up, you're like, oh, you're a young dude, not like an old grizzled dude that should have that deep voice. You know what I'm saying?
So visually, it wasn't matching. What you were hearing, what you were saying didn't go together.
I was like, it didn't match
that's
at all.
Fair.
But if you look at if you looked at the Angela Lansbury version,
so
that voice
Caro
matched, that person for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lisa, who is your favorite Sweeney?
Okay, as far as visually, I'll have to say Johnny Depp. I do like his voice. It's okay. But Josh has definitely got it better for me because I feel that he had more emotion. When I listened to the soundtrack, I felt that I could actually get more emotion out of it than I did with Johnny Depp. I think because of Johnny Depp looked and kind of formed it. So if we could get Josh with the Johnny Depp look, I think that'd be the perfect Sweeney Todd.
Okay. I actually am torn between those two, Josh Groban and Johnny. I think they both did fantastic. And I think they both highlighted different aspects of it. Yes, Johnny had an amazing costume department who helped him with his look and everything, but his singing wasn't horrible. And I know some people did. They're like, oh man, he was horrible. He shouldn't sing. I'm sorry, but that was his character singing voice. I've heard him sing here recently with one of the bands that he was touring with. He's got actually a decent voice, but you also have to think Sweeney Todd shouldn't be a pretty singer.
No.
This is a man who lived in Australia when it was a prison colony in the late 1700s.
Yes.
Homeboy should have a slightly gravelly something to his voice.
Johnny is what a lot of people would call a Hollywood baritone. And actually, the singing of Sweeney Todd is hot button topic right now, especially with the recent Broadway revival, because Sweeney Todd is meant to be a baritone, which is the pro shot actor was, as well as Josh Groban. Johnny, he did an amazing job. And yes, I'm not sure if he was being a character actor, because that is Johnny. Johnny is a character actor. He embodies everything he is. Or if that his voice has just improved with time and training, because that is very possible as well. I do believe Johnny, before he got ever into acting, he wanted to be a singer.
Yeah, he had a band he started in Florida.
Okay. So I think probably that it's a combination of both his just vocal range. They definitely changed some things. Some of the songs are a little bit higher. He sings them a little bit higher than the original, which is part of the reason why a lot of theater people don't care for it. To be honest, I find it interesting, and it's not. As I said, I don't judge anybody for their opinions. I find it interesting that you, Karen, you prefer the less like gravelly, like baritone voice of Josh than Johnny's. I don't want to call it more pretty, because it's not a prettier voice. It's different. I'm not sure what the adjective I want to use to describe Johnny's voice is, but Aaron Trevette, who just recently closed out Sweeney Todd, is a tenor.
Wasn't he in Moulin Rouge?
Yes.
Okay.
He's in Moulin Rouge. And he's a tenor. And that was really decisive at the time. To have a tenor play a baritone, because there are very few in theater, there are very few lead parts that are not already written for tenors. Why did they have to give it to a tenor? Because they did have to change keys. They did have to change the music to suit Aaron's voice, because he just couldn't hit all the notes consistently, and through no fault of his own, other than it was just that's
physically impossible.
Range.
Yeah.
I must say, like, I had before you invited me to be on this podcast, I purposely did not listen to Aaron before this. I did so in preparation, because I was upset at the fact that they didn't have a true baritone playing Sweeney, because that voice, that deepness, that hollowness that is a lot of baritones, just is so much a part of his character, the character of Sweeney Todd, for me, that I don't know how Aaron's going to do it justice. So I find that interesting.
What is your take on his? Because I actually never got to hear it, because I couldn't find it anywhere personally, but it was just on what I was looking through.
There's some slime tutorial stuff out on Aaron's. He never officially recorded it. They didn't get a Tiny Desk concert or anything. Aaron, I'm going to be honest, the Sutton Foster, Aaron Trevette pairing version of it, it wasn't my favorite from what I can tell. Aaron, I loved him in Moulin Rouge. I actually saw him on Broadway in Moulin Rouge. So I love him, and I love him as a character actor as well, but I didn't think he did a good job with Sweeney. I thought he was just kind of standing around and didn't act as much as I wanted him to. And then also Sutton, I thought she was trying to be Angela Lansbury's version of Mrs. Lovett too much.
Gotcha.
I thought Josh was more of a tenor with a baritone range. when I listen to
Josh.
Yeah, Josh Groban.
Josh Groban.
He sounds more like more like a tenor with a baritone range. Maybe because I don't much care for tenors. For me, I don't. I think it's just too deep. I don't know. I was never really into that deep voice.
Tenors are high.
Oh, tenors. Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, tenor. It
Was it
goes.
alto?
It goes soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, bass.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's because he was a tenor with a baritone range. I think I want a true baritone, like a true Is there any true baritone?
He is both a tenor and a baritone. He would be what I don't know if you would call it like a mezzo baritone, but like a mezzo soprano would kind of be in the higher range. That's what Josh would be. But Josh has a deeper vocal range than both Johnny and Aaron had. He can go lower, he can get more of those gravelly tones, but keep in mind he is a classically trained singer. Okay, he was not trained in a theater environment from what my research has shown on him. So that might be part of the distinction you're hearing. He is trained to be an opera singer. So that very well may be part of it.
And opera is supposed to be clean. It's supposed to have a smoothness to it that in theater is not necessarily the case. Theater, musicals, you want to have more of like a gravelly thing, or you have to put inflection because of what is happening in the scene versus opera, which is just you belt it out kind of deal. It's a different type of training.
Yeah.
For your voice. Yeah. Like you're supposed to learn how to make your voice gravelly without losing it for, the next day. Versus opera where that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. Exactly.
But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next character. Mrs. Lovett. Who is everybody's favorite Mrs. Lovett?
Let's just get it out of the way. I've already said it. It's Angela Lansbury. I've already said it.
Sarah, Angela Lansbury. Done. And we know Lisa does not like her. So Lisa, who is your favorite Mrs. Lovett?
I have to say Helena Bonham Carter. She really did a great job with the character, and her singing was pretty decent for what it was. So I really liked the way she moved around and her inflections and expressions, changing the costumes, especially when she was like in daydreaming about,
going to the beach.
At the beach, and the different dresses that she changed into with the parasol. It was just kind of cool. You could tell she really got into the character. So I felt like she was the character. So.
And I believe she actually had some actual like theater training for singing.
Yes.
So she was able to do more like the theatrical style.
So I remember one of her interviews, she said she wasn't a strong singer, but she does like to sing. But I actually really preferred her version of Mrs. Lovett because I loved her voice. Because sometimes I would try to sing like her when I'm in the car listening to like The Worst Pies in London or A Little Creased, Down by the Sea.
Yep.
I love those songs. Those are like my top songs.
So for me, I think my favorite Mrs. Lovett, it probably is Angela Lansbury, much to Lisa's dismay. I find Angela's was like that perfect amount of crazy. And even though like Helena, bless her heart, she is great at crazy, Angela just hit it. And when you go back and you actually like read some of like the history on it, originally when they were creating the musical, they created Mrs. Lovett's part for Angela, and they created songs specifically for Angela. And she was the one who's like, I am not the title character. he is, you need to focus on him. So she was a class act on that. But the fact that they tailored a lot of the musical to be for her, I thought was absolutely fantastic. So now we are going to jump into Anthony, the hopeful boy who tries to save Sweeney Todd's beloved daughter, Joanna.
I feel you,
Joanna. So Karen, who's your favorite?
I would have to say the 2003 singer. What's his name?
Hugh Panaro.
I believe that's him. But I liked his voice because the other actor, Jamie
Campbell Breyer.
Yeah. He sounded a little bit too whiny for me, a little bit too needy. I was like, I don't think I want you. When I met you in real life and you're singing to me, I'm like, I need somebody who's less needy, less whiny.
You don't want Vecna singing to you and
No.
trying to woo you?
No.
Lisa, who is your favorite?
I would have to say I don't remember the actor's name, but I actually like the one from 1979.
Okay, so that would have been Victor Garber.
And I like the way he portrayed. I think because he looked a little bit older, it was not as cringy. I actually liked him as he was portrayed.
Okay.
I did like the actor who played Vecna, but yeah, I agree with Karen. He was definitely whiny, and he seemed like kind of more of a wimp than the other one did. So,
okay.
He didn't seem like that much of a sailor. He didn't have the, experience. He seemed too inexperienced for a sailor.
That's fair. Sarah, how about you? Which one's your favorite?
I'm gonna go with Victor Garber as well. Which I'm not sure a lot of people realize who Victor Garber is. Probably is best well known being in Titanic. He was the guy who designed the ship. Which I think is really interesting because when you look at him in the film version, you don't really necessarily, at least I don't necessarily recognize him when he's there. But he's just one of these names that, like, again, is just like such a big part of like pop culture. He was also in Alias. And he has just like a big role, but I do think Victor Garber is probably my favorite. But again, it's the first version I ever heard. So that the innocent voice, like, I don't remember the name of the guy who played him in the movie.
Jamie Campbell Bower.
Okay. I didn't think he did a bad job, to be honest. I felt like, and I think this is just the influence of the movie and how it was portrayed, like how they wanted the movie to feel. I felt he looked, to be honest, was a little too grubby. So, like, if you look at the Victor Garber version, both him and Joanna are just like this, the opposite of Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett, where they're just like this pure, clean cut. Like, and I think that's what I love about his version, like the differences as well. So,
fun fact: Victor Garber also played the dad in Brandy's Cinderella.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh
yeah. So I would actually say Jamie is my favorite.
Okay.
I know you guys didn't like him. You thought it was a little whiny or whatever. But I'm also thinking this is a young man, and he's fallen in love for the first time with this woman that he saw from afar. And it's just this like beautiful, beautiful thing that he was just kind of like coming into, and he was just pure and innocent. And I think that is what I think I like most about it. Like when he sings Joanna, there's just this beautiful innocence to it. And I think that is what I love most about his portrayal. There is just that like pure, innocent, unadulterated, just love. Not saying the other guys aren't good. I think they all are, but that one was my favorite. But let's go ahead and hop to Joanna, who doesn't really have a whole lot of screen time or stage time or anything like that. But which Joanna was our favorites?
So since I couldn't listen to the original 1979 version before this, because I vaguely remember most of them, I actually like the actress who did it. What's her name? Betsy?
in the 1980 tour.
Yeah, Betsy
Yeah.
Jocelyn.
Yeah.
I actually liked her voice. I really enjoyed it. Coming second close would be Maria, who did the 2023.
Mm-hmm.
But the young girl who played it in the movie, I was like, that is very high.
Mm-hmm.
My dogs are whining. Like literally, my dogs were whining. I was like, So it has to be between Betsy and Maria, really, as my favorites.
Okay.
For me, I actually really liked Jane's version. And I think actually part of it is because I liked how high and floaty her voice was. You know, it really, one of the things, positive things that stuck out to me with the movie was how, you know, she's talking about like her birds and can't the birds teach me how to sing, and her voice really encapsulates what I think birds sound like. If somebody was trying to mimic how birds sing, she did a really good job of portraying that. And you know, she had like that hauntingly beautiful look like to her as well, that I think worked really well in the style that the movie was filmed, while also having that innocence and the portrayal of innocence that I came to expect from the original. So I think, to be honest, she's probably my favorite, Joanna.
Okay. Lisa, how about you? Which Joanna was your favorite?
I would have to say the one from the movie. Her voice was ethereal. I think she portrayed the innocence and being locked up, how she was like very naive, but she wanted to escape, and her voice was just beautiful. And the way presented her was very, like a shiny thing.
I would have to say, I think Maria from the 2023 was my favorite. She had that beautiful innocence that Joanna is supposed to have, but she had this gorgeous range. To me, she did sound like a songbird when she sang. So I would have to say Maria was my favorite. We're gonna do the judge next. And then after that, we're just gonna do like rapid fire of the other like mainish characters. Judge Turpin.
Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
Alan Rickman. I don't think we need to.
I was going to say, I don't think we have to go into discussion with this. I think all of us are very much a Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman. I know he got dissed because he's not much of a singer, but I'm sorry. No.
But when he
Alan
sang
Rickman.
as Judge Turpin, I was like, damn. Look at you, Alan.
And I don't think they could have cast him better. Like, to be honest, out of all the actors they could have picked, I think he was the one to do it.
Loved him. Rest in peace, sir. Rest in peace.
Yeah, Alan Rickman definitely knocked it out of the park. And I actually kind of like the fact that he isn't a strong singer and he did the role. I think it kind of actually it fit the fact that
Pretty women.
It was this guy who thought he was all that, and he wasn't. He couldn't even sing, like, to woo the ladies. All right, so now we're gonna kind of go into like just rapid fire. So Beetle Bumford, who is the judge's assistant, who do we think did a great job?
Timothy Spell. I really love Timothy Spell. He was in the 2007 version.
That's what I was gonna say.
Same. All right. So then we have the beggar woman, who also happens to be Lucy. Who did we think did a great job with that?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember the original Lucy's.
Meryl Louise.
I thought she did a really, really good job.
I'll have to say Laura Kelly.
I would have to say the one from the movie is my favorite. So
yeah, I think the movie one was my personal favorite. And then finally we have Pirelli.
Oh, I actually like Sasha. Sasha in that one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I really love. I believe it was John Aaron who played him in
The 1980 West End.
Yeah.
Oh, can we add one more character? That's Toby.
Yes, we can add one more
Mm.
character. I was trying to get to that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
Because I really love the movie version of Toby, because he was so sweet, so innocent, and I just wanted to protect him and hold him and just love him. It's like, I will take you from the streets, poor baby.
Mhm.
Would you give him gin?
Yeah, would you give him gin?
No, no, I would not. He does not need to be drinking alcohol.
Lisa, who would you pick for Toby?
I definitely would pick the one from the movie. He was really convincing.
Sarah, what about you?
I really love, and I think I'm saying his name, Gaten.
Gaten, Matazzaro.
Yeah, I loved his version.
He's my favorite too. Who's our dream cast?
I don't know how many of you have, if any of you have seen Schmigadoon. Christian Chenoweth and Alan Cumming essentially played the Schmigadoon versions.
I would actually love to see Alan doing Pirelli.
He would be a very good
He would
Pirelli
be a
as well.
fantastic Pirelli.
For me, have you seen that show Gallivant?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who played the king.
Oh, wasn't he also in Supernatural? He played Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe so. I would actually probably like to see him play Sweeney Todd.
Lisa, do you have any choices?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. You know who I'd really like to see play Pirelli is John Leguizamo. He did such a
oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I can see that.
great job as Pirelli. I can the guy who was the lead singer in Moulin Rouge. What's his
Ewan
name?
McGregor.
Ewan McGregor.
Yes. I'd like to see him play Sweeney Todd. I think he do a really good job. The judge, I would have to say, since we don't have Alan anymore, I would have to say the guy who played Dracula.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, I think he would do a great job as the judge because he plays good and bad guys very well.
I would actually, in like a few years, love to see Gaten come back and do Anthony. What is that name of that guy? Oh, he was in The Green Mile.
You mean Sam Rockwell?
Yes, he would play a great Beetle.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
For the judge, Gerard Butler. How do we feel about this as a musical, a horror musical specifically? I mean, we've already kind of talked about that, we think it is extremely influential, but how do we think every time it evolves, its impact on the mediums as a whole? So both theater as well as horror in its storytelling.
I mean, I believe it'll continue to be one of the best talked about and performed play, musical, movie, literature, because it hits almost every single media, because it started off as a short story, then it became a play, then it became a musical, and then it became a movie. And at some point, it also became a radio drama. How often do you have such a great work of art expand so many medias?
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't evolve again, it'll still be what it is. A great masterpiece of humanity at its lowest and sometimes at its finest.
Yeah. Sarah?
So Sweeney Todd this year it turns 45. Its influence, I mean, it's hard to tell where it's going to go in the future, because right now, just basically everything Stephen Sondheim has ever written has gotten a resurgence. So I think its most recent iteration, a lot of what people were talking about was more has to do with the composer than the story and the actors in and of themselves. And when people were talking about the actors portraying them, unfortunately, a lot of that was negative. But as far as its influence on the theater, I think what it's going to do is it is going to be one that you constantly see pop up in theaters, whether that be on Broadway, the West End. I could see them making like a one of the TV musical versions of it. You know, they've done it
With
they did it in the
Hamilton
50s and well, I'm not talking necessarily of a pro shop, but like
Okay.
one of these live on NBC type things. I could even see them doing something like that with Sweeney Todd. But that being said, I'm not sure how much more it can evolve in and of itself because it is a very beloved show in the theater. And that is part of the reason why like a lot of theater nerds rejected the movie as much as they did, because they felt like it didn't play homage. And so I think that that is something that anybody who does anything with Sweeney Todd is going to remember and maybe make them put the brakes.
Yeah. Lisa, how about you?
I say it definitely it does inspire for more people to go to the theater. It also had a lot of practical effects, which of course we all know makes me happy. And I think it has people look outside the box as far as theater and movies, how they can actually combine and become a beautiful masterpiece. But they can be different, but the same together. And then you can enjoy one, and then you can go to the other and enjoy the other, and kind of widen your imagination, widen your view a little bit. Because I know a lot of people who had seen it actually went to the play and they enjoyed it as well. And these are people that would never ever go to a theater. So yeah, I think it's a good influence on both the theater and the film industry. I'd like to see more, as long as they don't rewrite it like, oh, here's Sweeney Todd on the surfboard or something like that.
That would be funny.
But no, I think it's very inspirational for both the theater and the imagination.
And I really do enjoy it as a story. Sweeney Todd, you can connect on some point with almost every character. And a lot of us, especially with today's climate, we can understand the strife of the lower class and the upper class, but there's a connectivity to it. And like we've said, when it comes to horror is something that is very personal in how you perceive it. And Sweeney Todd does that. We had talked earlier in the episode and prior to starting the recording of how like the actual villain in the show Sweeney Todd is not Sweeney Todd. Yes, he is killing people and selling their bodies as food, but at the end of the day, he isn't the villain of this story. The villain's actually the judge.
There is a great debate among at least the theater community whether or not Mrs. Lovett is a villain or if she's a character with just like a tragic story that led her to villainy, if that makes sense. So
yeah. I'm gonna pull a Reddit move here. It's an
Lord.
ESH. Everybody sucks. Minus like Anthony, Toby, and Joanna.
Minus the children.
And we'll throw Lucy in there too. It's not her fault that she went insane. So
because she was innocent and naive and thought the world was pure, and she was going to go and get help for her husband, and she thought maybe Judge Turpin has turned a leaf. No, he didn't. You're just innocent and naive. I'm sorry, sweetie.
Yeah. But with that being said, and the hot debate, let's go to the real hot debate about the movie. I know all the theater people are like, no, don't talk about the movie anymore. You already did. Well, a lot of us really like the movie, so we're going to talk about it, and it's our podcast.
Make your own podcast. Talk about the theater.
So the movie, what's everybody's thoughts on the movie? Lisa, do you want to start us off?
Yes, the movie. I would definitely say that, it had a great story. you loved and you hated the characters. You had feeling for them. I personally, in my opinion, think Mrs. Lovett was more manipulative, narcissistic, and she had her ultimate goals. But, I like the flow of it too, and the way the songs and everything kind of flowed. I really liked it. So, and the scenery and everything was beautiful. I mean, I think it was put together very well for it being different from the theater version. So, I definitely liked the movie. I think it was a good, the rich against the poor and all that, just showing of how people had to live back then.
Karen, what about you?
I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the gothicness, the grittiness, the dark undertones that it had. The movie is more accessible to people than the Broadway plays and stuff, because I can't go to a Broadway play every single day. And there's not that many productions in my city for Sweeney Todd or other musicals. It's just either, a regular play or something that's trimmed down, not like a full musical. Yeah, I know Broadway has their own little streaming channel that came out, but I'm not going to spend $20 because there's a lot of streaming channels out there that I'm paying for. So for
Right?
me,
Exactly.
the movie is very accessible and it can reach a broader audience. And also it does introduce a lot of people to musical theater. Like my nieces, they had no concept of musical theater until we started watching musicals on, Disney or DVD. And once they had that concept of musicals, one of them even like auditioned for the Addams Family musical, and she got a part in it. For me, the movie musical is very well done, and I enjoy it because of the fact that it's so accessible.
Sarah, how about you?
So I'm probably going to get hit on both ends, both from the theater people and from the movie people. The movie, I guess I'm going to first start with what I didn't like about the movie. What I didn't like about the movie was the change in the music. The biggest complaints you're going to hear from any theater person is the Ballad of Sweeney Todd was cut. The chorus is such a big part of that show. The fact that it got cut was a big part of people being upset. I love Helena, but she wasn't my favorite Mrs. Lovett. I'm just going to be, again, I'm comparing it to another actress that I love, which is Angela Lansbury's version of her, where she's so comedic. And Helena obviously purposely chose not to go in that route. So for me personally, it was a very stark, crass difference that I didn't love. That being said, Tim Burton went into this not being a musical person, not being a stage person. He came from movies, and he did a very good job of making this this musical that was not very digestible to a mass audience, and making it more accessible, more digestible for the everyday viewer. That being said, what have I loved to see? Just like a version where we could have kept the beautiful choral pieces that were gone. Absolutely, but I understand and I do appreciate it, and I think Johnny, he did a great job of encompassing the character without copying the character. So, and so did Helena to a degree.
Yeah.
If they can make a full movie musical version from start to finish, I'll be so down on it. I don't care if you had to do an intermission, I will go take that potty break and then come back. I mean, if they could do it with the Titanic when it came out, they could do it today with a whole movie musical.
Yeah.
Start to finish.
Yeah. The movie was not meant to be the theatrical musical. The movie was meant to be a movie musical, and it was for non-theater people. That was their target demographic, was non-theater people. Come check out this cool story that they've been doing in the theater since, the 70s. And so when I hear the debate from the theater kids who are like, oh, we hate this movie, and I'm like, but the movie wasn't made for you. You were not the target audience for this. This was to share a story with people who've never heard of it before, and to give it a stage that can go a little bit further beyond what the theater stage can give in this current, in this current time frame. With that being said, yes, the movie obviously had its ups and downs, and there are things that they obviously could have done a whole lot better than what they did. But I think overall, the movie stuck true to what the actual story is. And it stayed true to the characters and how they interacted with each other. And so overall, it didn't lose the heart of the actual story, which is what we're all here for. And so I love it. I actually like the fact that it's on the gruesome side, and you do get that gore aspect that you can't get on theater, on the stage. And for those who are massive Tim Burton fans, like myself, it was another beautiful live action piece that we got to see from him. And it had all of our favorite regulars of his. So it was just classic. And then, of course, for us who love our Mr. Snape, our lovely Alan Rickman, Metatron, I'm going to go there. He was fantastic. And it was great to see him in something. And you know that he was there because he enjoyed being there and not because he was contracted to be there. And I think that was the cool thing, is that you could tell almost everybody was having so much fun filming this.
Blast. I can't wait to show my nieces this version, because they love Tim Burton. They love, The Nightmare Before Christmas. They love Frankenweenie. So I can't wait till they're old enough so I can show them Sweeney Todd and let them listen to the songs. Yeah. Because I love the songs. I really do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So is the movie the musical? No. Obviously not. However, it's as good as you're probably going to get at that time. So in 2007, it's as good as you're going to get to the actual theatrical version of it. Now we've come to the end of our talks on Sweeney. So final thoughts, and we'll stick on the movie. We'll say final thoughts on the movie, and we're going to give our skull ratings. We do 5 skulls, up to 5 skulls, I should say. How many skulls would you guys give Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street? Lisa, you want to start?
Yeah, I have to say I'd give it 4.5 skulls.
Okay.
I'm not going to get a total 5 skulls, but I'm going to definitely give it 4.5.
That's fair. That's fair. Sarah?
Probably say 3 skulls. I really, as a musical junkie, I miss the choral parts. If they would have done even just a little bit of the Ballad of Sweeney Todd, it would probably rank higher for me.
Okay. Karen?
Smoke, son of the devil, city on fire. I'll give it a 4.5.
All right, rock on. I would give it a solid 4. Yeah, it should have some more of those cool choir pieces or choral pieces. Yeah. And then, there's little things I'm like, it could have been a little bit better. But I think overall, it was a very fantastic film. Very enjoyable. Definitely something you can watch on repeat. So I'd give it a 4. But now we're coming to my favorite time of the episode when we have a guest.
Dun, dun, dun.
And because this is Sweeney Todd, we've replaced our normal electric chair with the Demon Barber's chair. So let's see if our guest, Miss Sarah Rose here, can survive the electric chair or the barber's chair. I think she will. I think she will.
Yeah, I mean,
First
As I
question.
cover up my neck subconsciously, like.
All right. So first question. Who is your favorite horror villain?
Death from Final Fantasy.
That is valid.
Very millennial answer. Like,
I mean,
Very valid.
You know,
Very valid.
I mean, I can see that because, you know, most people talk about, you know, the death of Final Fantasy being Tony Todd, and I can see it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. The next question. Kiss, Marry, Kill. Sweeney Todd edition. You have Sweeney Todd, Mrs. Lovett, and Anthony.
Okay. Mary, I think is gonna be Anthony. Like, let's be honest. Like,
That's fair.
you know, I'm taking the easy route with that one. Kiss, I think, would be Sweeney. I'm gonna be honest. I think there could be some fun there. And I guess by default, kill means it's Mrs. Lovett. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not into the whole stalker thing. So
Stage 5 clingers are not a go here.
not my thing. So, you know.
So, okay. You'd marry Anthony, you kiss Sweeney, you kill Mrs. Lovett. Gotcha. Now, the final question in the barber's chair. You're having a dinner party. There are 6 empty seats at your table. Which horror individuals would you invite at that table?
Okay. So I'm going to start with Eric.
Okay.
AKA the Phantom.
Okay.
I think, especially like if he was like the hostess with the mostess, I'm actually going to pick Ghostface because, you know, I don't know.
Which version of Ghostface?
Skeet?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think that, you know, I don't even know if I can articulate it. I just think it would be there'd be a comedic element with Ghostface being there. Ichabod Crane.
Oh,
Okay.
I think he would do a really good job also trying to
The Johnny Depp version?
obviously. Lestat was my next option. Okay.
Which Lestat?
Book Lestat.
Okay.
Fair.
Carrie White, just because I felt like we needed some female there.
Which version?
Don't make me choose.
We had opinions on that. We did a Carrie versus Carrie episode. We had some very decisive opinions on which Carrie was the best Carrie.
Yep.
I'm not going to get into that debate. Carrie White.
So we'll say default book Carrie.
Yeah, default book Carrie. And then because I'm going to be honest, I couldn't think of a sixth one. But I also think it would be fun, lighthearted Jack from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, okay.
That's a good one.
Like, yeah, you know, I could totally see him be like, come on, guys, let's not fight. Let's not murder each other. Let's stop. Don't bite anybody. Like, you know. So those are my answers.
Well, congratulations, Sarah. You survived the barber chair. So
I get to keep my juggler.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Listeners, would you let Mr. Todd be your barber? And how much therapy do you think all those kids need?
Everybody needs therapy. Every single one of them.
Yeah,
I
but the
mean,
kids are the ones who survive.
I know they all need therapy.
They all need therapy.
Exactly.
But if I was a doctor in that time and place, I'd be like, Mr. Todd, let's talk about this. Okay. Bigger woman, let's talk about this. Lucy, I'll help everybody. Like, help everybody.
Let's go ahead and continue this conversation, though, on our social media. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Threads, and our Facebook group. We would love to see you guys in there to continue this conversation. We always have so much fun with it. You can also subscribe, like, and rate us and share the podcast from all sorts of different streaming platforms like Apple, Google, Spotify, and we are even on YouTube. But guess what? You can also follow all of us individually. So where can they find you, Sarah?
You can definitely find me on DragonCon Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial. We have both a page. That page doesn't do a whole lot. It's more for announcements, especially around con. But we do have a group that's pretty active, especially right around DragonCon. And so that's where you can.
The group chats are insane.
They are. Sometimes I have to be like, okay, what am I? Scroll up, like, what did I miss? But you can almost always find me over there. You can find me around DragonCon, like just in general.
Lisa, where can they find you?
You can find me at Lisa Zen Shin on Facebook. You can find me as Zen Shin on Instagram and also on Threads.
Rock on. Karen, where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram.
And you can find me, Shannon, on all the things at Spilled Tea Wine Medium Mind. We definitely would love for you guys to come and chat with us because we always have fun when we do. But before we go, we do want to thank Sarah again for coming on and joining us on this chit chat. And of course, anytime we talk anything theater related, she will be the hostess with the mostest.
And if we do more musicals, just let you know I'm going to be singing. I mean, I'm sorry.
There's nothing. I'm surprised I didn't sing more.
Karen, you sing on episodes where there is no music. So
yeah, that's kind of true.
Karen, I think we'd be in sync with that, just in general. So for sure, any theater related things, I'm more than happy to come around and talk. Sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. We also want to thank you guys, the listeners. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. So we really do appreciate you joining us and listening. And we really do appreciate your support. But hey, stay spooky, our lovely little ghouls. Toodles.
Bye.
Bye.
And this has been the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station. Boo.